So, Mayor and Council, there are 4 items I need to bring to your attention, one of which is listed on the agenda, and I have to say one of the items I will be in the well. But the first couple of items is one, as it relates to the warrant roundup. You need to be aware that municipal court has cleared more than 1,300 warrants as part of the year's warrant roundup. This represents about a 57% increase over this time last year. The warrant roundup officially concludes on Friday, March the 9th. The second item I wanted to bring to your attention, mainly because I don't know whether many of you had an opportunity to listen. I believe it was last Tuesday. I actually spoke to one of the media outlets regarding our shortfall of about $9 or $10 million. Emphasis was placed on our obligations with the collective bargaining groups. And I do not want anyone to get the impression that the only items on that list of 10 million is the collective bargaining obligations. So I wanted to, for the record, to clearly state to, you're already aware, but to the public, is that the $9 to $10 million we're talking about in shortfall, part of it is tied to our collective bargaining obligations, but there are other items also. So I wanted to just kind of list them for the record. We have our police obligation and wages, fire obligations and wages, the general employees step increase considerations, the retirement increase, which is the Texas Municipal Retirement System, a potential increase. And we also had talked about the solid waste debt obligations, which we talked about earlier today. Those are the items that's listed as part of the shortfalls for fiscal 19. And again, I just wanted to make sure that it's clear that it's not just the obligations of the collective bargaining groups. It is, as I mentioned, all of the other items. That's item number 2. And the third item I wanted to talk about before we get to the wastewater rate update is to go into the well and introduce you to our Young Engineer of the Year. So, Mayor and Council, I believe you've seen this face before, this individual. So this is our Young Engineer of the Year. This is Sarah Nunes. She received this year's Young Engineer of the Year award from the Nunes chapter of the Texas Society of Professional Engineers. Sarah is a licensed professional engineer currently serving as a senior engineer for street operations. Sarah started with the city in 2013 and is currently the city's representative for state and federally funded projects, to include the Harbor Bridge Replacement Project. I wanted to take the time to introduce you to our Engineer of the Year award to Sarah, and to congratulate you. So thank you very much. Did you want to say something? Okay, we would love to take a picture.
Yeah.
Just a smile.
The last picture show.
We need a picture of everybody. We need to have Miss Rose come up here and have a picture of everybody. Yes.
Y'all don't slip out early, we want. All right, congratulations to you.
Okay, so Mayor, the last item is the wastewater rate update.
Mayor, Council, good evening. Reba George, Support Services Assistant Director for Water Utilities. The questions listed in the packet that we've provided, oops, lost my finger for PowerPoint. These questions listed came from a January 9th, 2018 City Council briefing concerning the wastewater rate structure that went into effect on January 1st, 2018. The first two questions came from council members, and the last two from a residential customer. Concerning customer billing and revised rates, the first utility bills with the new water and wastewater rates began to be received by customers the week of February 5th. Also, an online calculator for water and wastewater customers should go live by May 2018. This online tool will enable customers to estimate what their water and wastewater charges would be at a certain level of water consumption. In regards to the cap on wastewater rates, we looked at lowering the cap from 25,000 gallons to 15,000 gallons, as this is where our third tier begins in the current wastewater rate structure. Lowering the cap would create an estimated $6 million shortfall in revenue in fiscal year 18. This revenue shortfall results when any residential customer uses more than 15,000 gallons but less than 25,000 gallons as modeled in the original wastewater rate structure. Because the estimated lower revenue in fiscal year 18 would impact our required reserves going into fiscal year 19, we would need to reevaluate our rates in order to meet our required reserves. Looking at our winter quarter average, evaluating 12 months of customer consumption data to determine the 3 lowest months for an average would not yield much different results than if we utilized the winter quarter average method, using consumption during December, January, and February for an average. Therefore, the investment in reprogramming our billing system for this alternative 3-month average calculation would not be recommended. Our next step, we would like to come back and provide a status report on wastewater charges after 3 or 4 more months of utility bills have gone out and been received by our customers. We stand by for questions.
Anybody have any questions? Ms. Opal?
Ms. Rose, did you receive that memo that we got from, that was referenced earlier today? Were you included on that with the? Yeah, I think we just need to make sure on the wastewater discussion that we had received an email, and in that email there were a lot of concerns that were brought up. And I just was not sure if you had received the same email that the council had received.
I think I might have sent it to you, but it was late last night, I think.
So we just need to make sure that you have a copy of that, because I think the one thing that I did find interesting in our previous discussion was that we talked about pay-as-you-go. And if I'm not mistaken, part of what we're doing by how we're processing these rates with our wastewater and water is we are doing more pay-as-you-go. Is that correct? Maybe, Mr. Van Vleck, could you tell us exactly how much we're paying as you go? Because I think that's a pretty big step for us as a city.
Yes, in the wastewater in particular, we've went from basically 0 to 12 million a year of pay-as-you-go on the wastewater. The other thing I wanted to highlight is in that memo or the email that he sent, he addressed that it appeared we went up by 12.5% or something like that. I looked at that and I didn't think that was the case, and what it was is it appears in the 2016-17 budget we put in a wrong revenue amount. It should have been about 5.5 million higher than what was in the 20s. We actually got the receipts because remember we didn't change rates in 16-17. They stayed the same. So the revenue of about a little over 50 million came in. But in our budget, it said 45 million. The previous year it was 50 million, the previous year it was 50 million. Okay, so, and this year we're projecting 52 million. So that's pretty drastic change between those, and until he raised that, I hadn't went back and looked at that, but we did look at that to explain it. But yes, we're increasing the pay-as-you-go, particularly in wastewater.
Well, I think that that really reflects a lot of what we had talked about earlier about how the city needs to begin to think about operating, and particularly in wastewater, even in light of our discussions on P3s or not P3s, this is a very costly service to provide to the community, and we need to land on this and make it stick. And it's not going to be fun this year or when we look 2 years from now and have to go back and revisit rates, because I do not believe that we will be in a position to not revisit rates in this area for several cycles. So we really appreciate your continuing to try to get this right, and we really appreciate the citizens bringing that up. I'm sure that you had a moment there when you realized that number was wrong, and you know, you used to have a full head of hair, right, before you... That is correct. All right. Well, thank you very much, Mr. Van Vlecken. Thank you so much for this information. You've been very forthcoming and helping walk us through this very complex process. So thanks, Ms. George. I appreciate it.
I've had a couple of questions. Have you gotten the programming or something where people can pay online? That is working now?
I believe so, yes.
Huh?
Yes.
It is? Okay. Well, I mean, I'd gotten a couple of calls. I don't know when it came on, but they said they were having difficulty accessing so they could pay online or something.
Yes, sir. Last week we had a glitch. I think it was last Tuesday, and it was taken down Tuesday night, but it's back online. It was back online the next day.
Okay. All right. Thank you. I don't see any other comments. Anybody have anything? All right.